Linda and I came to Texas 3 years ago, and as a lot of you know this already, you know, we're so honored to be here. I literally just got off the airplane from California. I was there for 3 weeks, and for me it was a root canal. I'll tell you, I wanted to kiss the ground of Texas. And I got three quick interesting pictures to show you that spell out why we moved to Texas. All right, so what you see there, if you think Joe Strauss is something to be disturbed about, how would you like your taxes going towards paying for keeping the illegal aliens in California? That's what they just passed that bill. So I walked out of my friend's house, and there on the ground was the newspaper. I had to take a picture of it, and I'm like, wow, this is what their taxes is going towards. And even my secretary and my assistant, they were like, I can't, my taxes, I don't want to be paying for that. That's like breaking the law. I mean, there are sane people still there, but this is what's going on with your tax money. So, I mean, that would be pretty tough, right? To have your taxes every day going to that. So, anyway, so I just thought that was like, wow, that's I got to talk tonight. There it is. This is why I'm here. I couldn't bear that. Move it to. This here is 5th Street Promenade, or 3rd Street Promenade. It's a popular social area, and they just have a stand just out and here, get your decal, your dump Trump decal. And I almost got in a conflict with the guy. The New York side of me came out. He's like, what are you taking a picture of? And I'm like, you got a problem with that? Yeah, I got a problem with that. You know, it's like, because if you look over here, it says he's not my president. It's like, last I checked, we lived in a republic, you know, yeah. But anyway, so this is what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. You don't know how lucky we are to be here. Yeah, Texas has got its issues, but the next one. This is in the airport of LAX, okay? The captain has now turned on the tail wagging sign. Pets unstressing passengers is happening. It's like an extension to the college kids hugging dogs, you know, to get them over the election results. So this is, if I Google this, it's like, what the heck is this, right? I Google this. This is to help people get over the stress while waiting for an airplane. Oh. Is that something? So they got dogs throughout the airport. They're in red, and it's like, you know, this is where their energy goes towards. Never mind their deficit spending, illegal aliens, and on and on and on. But anyway, is that, do I have one more? I forgot what I was.
You're just making this
up.
Oh,
yeah.
You're making
so this here, yeah, I know. So here, honestly, I went to a bathroom in one of the restaurants. You have a familiar looking women's bathroom, and then here you have everyone else. I guess the women, you can trust them, you know, so far. Everyone else. I even asked the maitre d', I said, why isn't there like an everyone else for both, you know? Yeah. I said, it looks like the handwriting's on the wall on that one. Anyway, but yeah, that was a local restaurant. Anyway, so Linda and I, we're thrilled to be here. We run a Sunday group. We were doing this in California too. We were trying to stop the Titanic from sinking, but we ran a Sunday group, Hillsdale College Webinars. Please give us your email if you'd like to be part of it. But every Sunday out of our house, 2 o'clock, 2:30 to 6, we as a group get educated on the Constitution, Federalist Papers, the great books, on and on and on. It's put on by Hillsdale College, and it's great to learn together and become sharper so we can go out in our little worlds, our little communities, and spread that conservative light in a much more educated way than before. So we invite you to our home to be part of that. And yeah, thank God for Texas. We literally are saving the country here. Really, we are an example of that here. Anyway, thanks again. And I met this guy. He was the first guy I met. Anyway, that was quite a coincidence.
My husband Grant and I moved here, not here, but to Texas 7 years ago this July. We were native Californians, born and raised, and California changed. over the years. It was not the state that we loved and grew up in. And so we believe we were led here by God. It happened. We had always wanted to go to Colorado where the mountains were beautiful and they had snow, but that was slowly becoming more and more like California. And so we were set to visit some friends that lived up in Colorado when a freak ice storm hit Colorado, and we had to detour, and we decided, well, we've never been to Texas, let's go. So us and our 2 kids came down all the way through Dallas and Austin and San Antonio and all the way back down, and met some of the most amazing people we had ever met on the planet. They were asking Grant if he needed a job. Who does that when you first meet someone? No one.
We're looking at books at Sam's Club, and 5 minutes into a conversation, they're trying to find me work.
It was astounding. And I was homeschooling our kids, and so it seemed right. So that was October of 2009. By, April? He was being offered a job in Dallas, and by July, we were here. And we had no idea where to live because we don't know anything about Texas. So we lived in Forney for a little while and realized everything we wanted to do was up this way. So we ended up moving and building in Lucas, and absolutely love it here. We still have friends that are on Facebook that are crying about the single-payer health care that they want to now pass in California. And people have no idea what that means. All they see is that it's free. And they have no idea what the real price is that they're giving up. So we kind of go, so glad that we're here. Everyone has been wonderful. Conservatives in California are becoming more scarce. His parents, I think, are the only ones in Orange County anymore. But thank you. It's a wonderful state. We won't mess it up. Thank you.
Thrilled to introduce our main speaker tonight, Ms. Nina Yablock. Nina lives in Nemo, Texas. She's a business attorney and the general counsel for PJ Media, and therefore Instapundit. If you haven't been to Instapundit, you should. As well as the co-founder of Full Digital Jacket, a company that puts on Bullets and Bourbon, a celebration of the Second Amendment. Nina was born and brought up in New York City, a card-carrying child of the New York liberal establishment. Nina started to question her political beliefs in 1997 when her husband Ed Driscoll came to live with her in Northern California. Ed is in the audience. Say hi.
Hello.
And will be mingling with us during our dessert time. He rarely speaks in public, but is happy to meet with like-minded groups on an informal basis, and often leaves the public speaking to Nina. She's a ham. So. Yes. He's a veteran journalist who has written hundreds of articles for magazines and websites ranging from PC World to Guitar World, National Review, and the Weekly Standard. He has been affiliated with PJ Media since its birth in early 2005. And over the years, he's produced their weekly Sirius XM radio show, edited hundreds of articles, and produced numerous Photoshop parodies of politicians such as Obama, Hillary, and Trump. He has interviewed many of the founders and the intellectual influences of the Tea Party, so you'll want to chat with him later. Without further ado, I welcome the awesome Nina Yablock.
People wanted to hear about Ed's journey from California to Texas, but we have this deal. He writes, I talk, so so you have me. And I was going to give you Ed's story, but it's really quite simple. Ed was brought up in sort of a purple state, New Jersey, southern Jersey, conservative parents. He was very apolitical when he was growing up. In college, he sort of went with the mainstream media, so he was leaning a little left. but that was, I think, half rebellion against his parents. And then he found himself, he is a conservative writer, and he ended up in California only because we met online, and I was less mobile than he was. So conservative guy got stuck in California, left. That's his story. It's not that complicated. He never liked California. He was never comfortable in California, and he escaped. My story is a little different because I grew up in New York City. You grew up in New York City, didn't you? Yeah.
You got a problem with that?
First of all, I just want to say I was listening to this Collins County stuff. Y'all don't know Texas. I mean, this is like suburbia here. We live in Somerville County. The whole county has 2,500 people. 2,500 people, the whole county. The high school football stadium holds 6,500. It's Texas, right? But our story and how we got here really has to do with football as much as politics. And I'll tell you about the football, but I want to tell you about New York for those of you who didn't grow up in New York. And New York is really a series of small towns. And the small town I lived in was the New York City liberal intelligentsia ghetto. And it was a ghetto, a self-imposed ghetto, because they did not let outsiders in, and they did not look out to the outside. It was a self-contained world, and it was very much like a religion, and it had its own holy book. And the holy book of the New York City liberal intelligentsia was the New York Times. As holy a book as there was. So much so that once my cousin and I were talking about how hard it was to talk to my mother. And my cousin and I were like sisters almost. I was an only child, and she didn't like her sister. So we're talking about my mother, and she says, "You know what we have to do, Nina? We have to take out an ad in the New York Times book review section, because then your mother will listen to us." That was the weight of the New York Times where I grew up. And like any other religions, we had saints. FDR was a saint, JFK was a saint, you know, at some point there. It really was a religion. There was sort of a limit to my mother's leftward leaning. I have since thought that maybe my father just shut up and didn't talk, but it may not have been that liberal. There was a limit. The same cousin, Karen, married a fellow. They lived in Greenwich Village and had a 9-year-old daughter. The year that she was 9, there was a person walking around in Greenwich West Village where they lived, exposing himself to young girls. People went to the police. The sketch artist drew a sketch, and people were posting this sketch saying, "If you see this person, call the police so we can catch him and zip up his pants." My cousin's husband went around after the people putting up the posters and tore them down because he had not been convicted yet, and it wasn't right to put his picture up, notwithstanding George had a 9-year-old daughter walking around there. So that pushed my mother too far, but that was about the limit. And since we moved to Texas, when I told my cousin Karen we were moving to Texas, I'm usually the one who organizes family reunions. She said, "Well, I hope you won't have a cousin's reunion in Texas because I won't come." So that's where I grew up, and when I moved to California, it wasn't much of a culture shock. It was the same people I had known in New York, but they dressed a little different. Better weather. That was basically the difference, better weather, but the same people. And then I married Ed, and we had talked a little bit about conceptual issues in terms of politics. We knew we both loved this country that we live in. We were both very, very clear about our love of the United States of America. And we were both capitalists. He had been a financial planner, so that was one of the things that kind of first drew me to him. Here's somebody who probably doesn't think money is evil. You know, I'm a business attorney. I kind of like my clients. I don't think they're evil. So we had those two things, but we'd never had a real serious political discussion till one night. And it was a doozy. Till 3 a.m. And neither of us was really very nice. I was worse. My language was not nice at all. I said bad things about my husband, but he used better language. But he had the same idea that because I identified as liberal and believed in A, B, and C, therefore I had to believe in D and E. Didn't ask me whether I believed in D and E, but I was liberal, therefore I did. So we both had to really tone down. Is this working? Yeah, tone down our rhetoric. And we found that as we talked, the longer we talked, we really did agree on a lot of things other than just love of country and capitalism. But it was a slow process. 3 things happened that kind of pushed me further and further. The first was, if any of you have read any of Ed's blog posts or read him in Instapundit, he's very involved in reporting about media bias. And he dared to tell me that the New York Times did not publish the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He was a blasphemer. He blasphemed, I guess is the verb. But I'm sort of open-minded in my own way, and he would tell me something that had happened, that he was reporting on it at, I don't know whether you were reported, whether you were at PJ Media yet. Anyway, he would say something that had happened, and I would go secretly and go off and look at the New York Times website to see if it really happened, you know, or what really happened, you know, what would. And I noticed he thought it was very important, and the New York Times had it on page 28, or not at all. And I began to realize that the New York Times was not a holy book, and was in fact exceedingly biased. So that was the first thing. Then my husband said, you know, all your liberal friends are really very bigoted. Pshaw! No, that's not true. Say it isn't so. But to my credit, I may have been blind for many years, but I started looking at what was going on. And I saw how mean these people were, really. They, you know, there's that book, I Can't Believe I'm Sitting Next to a Republican. That was all my friends. They would come and sit down at a dinner party and just launch into a tirade about how horrible Republicans were, how terrible they were, how evil they were, and assumed that anyone who was sitting at their table or whose table they were sitting at, because often it was my table, had to agree with them. And you couldn't stop them. Well, I might have been able to, but I am nowhere near as intelligent and as good at expressing political ideas as my husband, and he's too polite to interrupt someone who's on a tirade. And he believes that at the dinner party you do not discuss politics or religion. So he wouldn't interrupt, I wouldn't interrupt, and we'd sit there. And Ed got very uncomfortable dealing with these people. And as between going to another cocktail party and my husband's comfort level, he won. So we became very, very isolated in California. I don't know if you guys found that, but we just stopped socializing to a great extent. And the third thing that pushed me, you can probably all guess, was 9/11. And I know you all remember where you were when you heard. We were fast asleep in bed, and the phone rang. It's on my side of the bed. Hello, who is it? It was a friend of ours from England, and he said, turn on the TV. And I figured he was on TV, a friend of ours was on TV. So it was something funny, right? Okay, what channel, Steve? Any channel. And that's when I knew this was something horrific. And we spent all our time that day watching TV. Ed went online and the big websites were all closed down. They were so overcrowded. And he was getting news from blogs and bloggers. And then I heard the mainstream media. We asked for it. Excuse me? And I heard my friends. We asked for it. No, these people attacked my country. They attacked the United States of America. We did not ask for it. And that day, in many respects, my whole world turned around. And then I ended up finding myself representing PJ Media and having dinner with Andrew Breitbart, having dinner with DBH.
Victor Davis Hanson?
Victor Davis Hanson, VD8. Victor Davis Hanson, you were talking about studying the roots of liberty. He's amazing on that subject. So it was in that milieu where we're isolated. I have had my eyes opened. I know the New York Times is not gospel. I've given up on my friends to a great extent. That football comes in. Well, we met because of football, which is another long story. But my husband has always been a Dallas Cowboys fan. Even when he lived in New Jersey, he was a Dallas Cowboys fan. So in 2004, being the loving wife who I am, I bought him tickets for the 2004 Thanksgiving Dallas Cowboys game. And I decided, let's drive out in the country and see Texas. Let's find a restaurant an hour or two away from Dallas, and we'll see Texas. So we got in the car, and we're driving, and Texas, outside of Dallas, looks like New Jersey, McDonald's, Home Depot, and then there's an intersection with 3 drugstores. Why are there always 3 drugstores? And we're driving, and it's like, okay, this is really great. We're driving through New Jersey again. And we go through one town, and suddenly it's countryside, and there are these big round things. What are these? Is that how hay grows? In a round thing? And Ed starts humming the theme from Deliverance. We're driving along, and we turn on a smaller road, and he's singing louder. And then we see the sign for the restaurant, and we turn, and there's no restaurant. And we're driving down a gravel road, and how many of you have been to Rough Creek Lodge? It's incredible. It's gorgeous. That's where we ended up. We didn't know it was a hotel. We had a wonderful dinner there, and we decided, let's go back there. So starting in 2004, we started going to Rough Creek Lodge for vacations. And then about 10 years later, I said to Ed, we love this area that we're visiting. At first, we thought the people were friendly because they were well trained at Rough Creek. Honestly, we went and asked them. We thought it was a training facility for a hospitality college or something. We didn't know people were naturally that nice. Truth be told, I think the people in New York are nicer than California. Honestly, people in New York, at least if you hold a door for them and they don't say thank you and you say you're welcome, they will stop and say, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. California, they won't. They just keep on walking. Really. New York, much nicer. But we went to the local supermarket, and people were nice. In California, Ed didn't like it if I talked to people in the checkout line, which I do. In California, he didn't mind because the people were nice. Ed became a different person. Suddenly, he was outgoing also. Doesn't do public speaking, but he was much more outgoing and comfortable, even not talking about politics, because these people had the sense of manners and decency that both of us were brought up with. So about 3.5 years ago, we thought, why don't we buy a house in Texas? We're not going to move there, of course, but maybe we'll retire there some year, whatever. So we went and looked. Ed, my husband, who didn't talk to anyone for 15 years in California, goes down to the lounge at Rough Creek Lodge, finds some people there who know Andrew Breitbart, and they become friends, and he finds this couple who's looking to rent a house. So we bought a house, and we did a timeshare with this lovely young couple where we kept a bedroom and a bathroom. They had family nearby. When we came to visit, they vacated. We did that for about a year, and then we told them, sorry, you gotta leave. We don't want to go back to California anymore. We made a list of the pros and cons, and we said, let's pretend we still live on the East Coast, because Ed's from New Jersey, I'm from New York, and let's do the pros and cons. The only pro we could think of in California was the weather. And it does have great weather. You know, got to admit, it's where we were, Northern California, terrific. But we would not have moved from the East Coast just for the weather. Texas is Texas. I don't have to tell you what Texas is. I'm surprised when you said you loved California, because we never found anyone who loved California. We found people who loved the weather in California. Everybody else was just there for the economy. Well, the economy that used to be. Yeah. The economy that's about to blow up. But we moved to Texas so my husband would stop feeling like a total outsider. Now, I know there are Democrats in Texas. You know, there are people who are very liberal in Texas. But people here have manners. They don't sit down at the table and bombard, well, maybe some of them do, but the ones we've come across, they don't bombard you. They gently ask, what do you think? Do you mind answering a question? What do you think about the president? They ask whether you want to engage. They have manners. They have decency. They care about each other. They're polite, and they're happy to be there. All my life, I never saw a happy person at a fast food place. Suddenly, we're in Texas, we go through the thing in Jack in the Box, because they have caffeine-free Diet Coke. Thank anybody whoever brought the thank you. And the girl in Jack in the Box is polite and cheerful. This is shocking. And it's wonderful. And so we also do not want to bring California with us. We escaped from California. We came here to find a place where people love this country of ours and are not ashamed to say it. We came to a place where people fly the American flag, any excuse they can come up with, or no excuse at all. We came to a place where people have manners and respect one another, and that's why and we came to a place where my husband is happy, and I'm happy, and I grow yellow roses. That's my story, our story, and